So you've purchased the latest Commander precon to come out this year, Commander 2018, and specifically you've purchased Subjective Reality, and maybe you purchased Subjective Reality because you wanted to play with Yuriko, the Tiger's Shadow. Similar to our series last year where we did budget edits to all the Commander decks, we're doing the same thing this year. I've actually already put out one video on budget changes you can do for Commander 2018, and I've got them all lined up for the rest of the season. And this instance here, we're going to be, as I mentioned, talking about Yuriko and using her as the commander in your deck. So we're going to be pulling out a lot of stuff and making budget edits. Again, the goal of this here is budget. So if you're looking at getting the most competitive deck possible, this is not the video for you. But if you're looking at making some changes on the cheap, you're looking to put your own personal stamp on this deck, this video is for you. Not only that, we managed to keep it under $20 for this deck, and finally Wizards of the Coast has given us the Ninja Commander that we've been asking for, and this card is extremely popular. I think it's one of the most popular cards out of Commander 2018. So Wizards, if you're listening, get us more ninjas. Make it happen. I want more ninjas. All right, so what are we getting out of here? So first of all, because Yuriko is blue-black, so the Dimir colors, we are taking out every card in this deck, this precon that had white to it. So it's 23 cards with white straight out. No real necessary explanation. We just can't play them. We're going to be taking out 7 additional cards that just really aren't very good. Like Jeskai Infiltrator is, a trash card in my opinion. I'm sure there are some corner cases where we might want to play this card, but some of these cards I don't even think should have made it into the precon. There are a lot of other cards we could have gotten that are still cheap, that are just better. But that's neither here nor there. One other card that we're going to be taking out is Geo Golem. So this is actually a really good card. It's expensive, sure, but it allows you to cast your commander for free, so kind of pays for itself, especially late game. The thing with this deck is that we are not going to be casting Yuriko at any point. Geo Golem, you're great. Take a knee, you're out for this for this one. So let's look at what we're going to be adding into the deck. First of all, we're going to be adding ninjas. So Ink Eye's Servant of Oni can pull bombs, is hard to kill through regenerate, and while she might be expensive in terms of eating up our budget, I think she's worth including because this is, after all, a ninja deck. I've got most of the ninjas here, except I think for maybe 1 or 2. So it's not complete Ninja Tribal, but it's a ninja deck. That's what we're going with here. So speaking of ninja decks, we're going to have Higur the Still Win. I must have mispronounced that name. I apologize. Don't yell at me. Or, yell at me if you want to. I don't know. I can't stop you. This is a must-have card. It makes ninjas unblockable while also pulling other ninjas out of your deck. So you're going ahead, you're tutoring for those ninjas, getting them out on the battlefield, which is what you want because Yuriko's ability is a pretty strong one, and it's one of the things that gets kind of lost in the shuffle because everybody's freaking out about the fact that there's a commander with ninjutsu, but you look at the ability and it's whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. So you're drawing your card, but then you're also dealing damage to each opponent equal to the converted mana cost. So you're actually not dealing damage. The opponent's losing life. It's a small semantic that does have some significant importance with the game rules. So we're also going to continue on. Okiba Gang Shinobi can put some good stuff into the graveyard that you can then just pull with Ink Eyes. So we mentioned how Ink Eyes is really good to pull bombs out of the graveyard. Well, we're going to be putting hopefully a few bombs into the graveyard with Okiba. We also have Ninja of the Deep Hour. So this is not really an exciting ninja, but it provides some great value and also increases its value when Yuriko is out on the battlefield. So drawing cards and the like just from doing damage. It's a good card. There's not much more to say. Mistblade Shinobi throws back an opponent's creature and then makes them spend the additional mana to recast it probably at a later time. This will allow you to gain a slight tempo advantage while your opponent is then wasting mana to cast creatures that they've already spent mana on. Now, obviously, you're going to be strategic with this. You're not going to pull, you're not going to bounce cards that have huge end of the battlefield abilities, but you are going to bounce cards that either have good static abilities or are just a pain in the ass on the battlefield at this point. The more expensive, the better. The last ninja that we'll be adding is Walker of Secret Ways. So this generates advantage by sending ninjas back to your hand so that you can reuse ninjutsu. It's a vital part of this deck, and it only costs 37 cents. So there's no negotiating in terms of these ninjas. I think we should include all of them. They're not expensive, with the exception of Ink Eyes. I mean, Higur is kind of expensive given the budget of how much it actually eats up in this deck, but totally worth it. And before we get into the rest of the meat of the cards, we're going to look at some of the potatoes. And by potatoes, I mean, like, we've got our mana rocks, so we're putting in Sky Diamond, which is going to end up replacing one of the white-oriented mana rocks that we're forced to remove. We're going to add in Deadeye Rig Hauler, so it gives you some added benefit by returning a ninja to your hand so that you can reuse its ninjutsu ability again. So this does provide a bit of consistency if you're missing some of the puzzle pieces. Similar to that, we have Cig River Cutthroat. So this was like the old commander of ninja decks, in the sense that you're able to generate card advantage just by this creature being out on the battlefield as you're hitting your opponent. So, or even, you don't even have to. Your other, like, opponents can hit other opponents, and then suddenly you're starting to draw cards. So it is a good card to have. A Trophy Mage is another card that I think you really need in this deck. It really nets you a good haul. We have quite a few artifacts and ways to bounce creatures in and out of our hand. So a recurring Treasure Mage will help thin out your deck while also pulling out some important pieces to help your board presence. It's Economics 101. Equilibrium does the same thing, but on a more consistent basis. It allows you to return ninja to your hand after casting a creature. So, and that's, in relation to Deadeye Rig Hauler. So they act in a similar fashion, but again, Equilibrium just allows you to continue spinning that wheel and getting that engine revving. So you're using that ninjutsu ability to get the ninja out on the battlefield. You're returning a creature to your hand. You're then casting that creature, and that triggers, if you pay the mana, to return that ninja back to your hand so you can continue the cycle. Great card, really needs to be in here. And those creatures that you want to be attacking with, obviously you want them to be able to get through, so that's why you're going to want to put in creatures that have evasion. And some of the best ones here are these cards. They are all low-cost creatures that can help facilitate ninjutsu triggers and helping trigger Yuriko's ability, let alone the other ninjutsu abilities. So really, these are pretty redundant. There's quite a few of them, but we want to ensure that we're going to be getting these types of creatures out on the battlefield. A Keymaster Rogue is another one, so not as cheap, but does come through with a larger ability. So it allows you to bounce a creature you control, and enabling that cycle of returning ninjas after they've used their ninjutsu ability. So if you happen to return Keymaster Rogue to your hand from a ninjutsu ability and then recast it, you can then, again, it's that equilibrium combo that's going on, and I think that is a pretty good one. Shadow Mage Infiltrator can only be blocked by artifact or black creatures and generates card advantage in the off chance that you really don't need to activate any ninjutsu abilities. Maybe you don't have any ninjas in your hand, so you'll allow yourself to draw some if you're able to do some damage. Rexel of the Risen Deep. So this one here is kind of an outlier. He's a huge bomb. He's a beast. He combos with Okiba if your opponents throw away something good, and can also help you win the game outright if there happens to be a devastating spell in your opponent's graveyard. I really think this is a good bomb that you just throw on. It's a huge body. And all that, if you happen to reveal, a card like this with Yuriko, you're then able to do a bit more damage. It's a significant amount. This is a good card. This is, in my opinion, a really good card for this deck. Another card that really works well for this deck is Vela, the Knightclad, another former commander for Ninja Tribal decks. This here is great because it can help chip away at your opponent's life each time one of your creatures leaves the battlefield, which, if running well, should happen each turn as you are bouncing unblocked creatures to your hand with ninjutsu, and then if you're using some of the equilibrium type shenanigans, you're triggering that quite a few times. Adding artifacts that enable evasion is also a great way to fill the gap should you be missing certain combo pieces that would let you enable for continuous ninjutsu activations. So one of them is Narok Stealth Suit, but let's not forget about Whisper Silk Cloak and Prowler's Helm to fill that role. Now, yeah, if you have a wall, you're kind of screwed, but not that many people play walls unless you happen to run into that one guy who's playing like wall tribal. Oh boy. Now we need to add some removal since most of the deck's removal is tied to white. we're going to put in Doomblade and Murder. They're really good removal spells that can help you take care of a creature. But we still need to add some master removal. So we're going to add Crux of Fate and Curse of the Swine, along with Extinguish All Hope. But with Curse of the Swine, your opponents still have attacking creatures or potential blockers, but they are likely not as big of a threat as what was originally on the battlefield and what's taking their place, right? So I think it's a good trade-off to have, and if you've got yourself a good board presence, maybe that isn't an issue. If it happens to be, there's also Distorting Wake, which will help you eliminate those pesky pigs once and for all. But in cases where you might not want to use 2 removal spells to just clear the board, cast at the right time. It can be a crippling play that your opponent never recovers from. All right, now let's go on to win conditions. All right, we've already talked about a few cards that can kind of be win cons, but Quita's Spike can take a player down in only a few turns, especially if equipped creatures can't be blocked, right? So you're just throwing yourself in and dealing damage and then halving players' life totals. It generates chaos, and I like it. Earwig Squad looks like a terrible card until you see its prowl cost. Let's not kid ourselves, it's still not that great of a card, but the fact that we do have quite a few rogues here, the prowl should be able to trigger from a few of the rogues that are present in the deck, and then when you hit the player and you've cast it for this the evoke cost, or prowl cost, sorry, not evoke, prowl, you get to choose 3 cards from your opponent's deck to exile. While this card likely won't flat out win you the game, it will make it harder for your opponents to win the game, and that's pretty good. I'm okay with that, because you have other cards that could help make you win the game. Gonti, Lord of Luxury, is in a similar space where you can pull some great stuff off the top of your opponent's deck that can either stay in exile, so you don't want to have to deal with it, or it can find its way on your side of the battlefield, so you can generate some bombs through that. This, in conjunction with a card like Earwig Squad, will allow you to, well, ideally, you find the good stuff, you get a bit fortunate in exiling some random stuff that maybe you don't want to use or use for your side. I like this card. I think it fits in well here. You give it some sort of evasion, and there you go. The final card that we're going to talk about is Arcane Adaptation. It can turn all your creatures into ninjas, and suddenly those unblockable creatures we talked about, like all those 1-mana 1/1s that are unblockable, can help activate Yuriko's ability each and every time they do damage. And then at this point, you're drawing a lot of cards, you're dealing a lot of damage to your opponents. It's a great card for this deck, and I think it's made for something like this where there isn't that many ninja cards, so we want to flesh out the deck and make Yuriko's ability more of a commonplace. So granted, there aren't any real tutors here, so you're going to have to get lucky with the cards that are already in your deck in terms of being able to scry or being able to draw a significant portion of your deck to find that card. If you don't get it, I think there's still enough in this deck that will allow you to perform well and perform at a consistent clip to do some damage. Again, this is only a $20 budget that we're working with, and we had a lot of cards to pull out. I'm surprised we got there. I'm pumped that we did. But let me know what other cards you would have put in this deck. There are quite a few other cards that obviously I would have loved to include, but with that self-imposed budget, just didn't make it happen. So let me know what you think about this budget deck tech or budget changes. I would love to hear it. And until next time, good gaming.